Hello, my name is Clayton Capoletti. Thank you for taking the time to review this presentation. My study explored the role of higher education in the recovery from cultic influence and groupthink dynamics. During this presentation, I will defend the project's purpose, methodologies, findings, and conclusions, while also addressing its implications for educational leadership, online adult learning, and future research. This study looked at higher education as one possible part of the recovery journey for individuals who have left a cult or high control group. It focused on adult learners who completed at least one college level course after leaving a group. The goal was to better understand how they described those educational experiences and how they believed college may have supported their recovery, resilience, and personal growth. The findings also connect to broader questions about leadership, innovation, online higher education, and how institutions can better support adult learners with complex life experiences. The purpose of this study was to explore how former cult members described their higher education experiences after leaving a cult. I wanted to understand how those experiences related to transformative learning, identity reconstruction, autonomy, resilience, and social reconnection. The research question guiding this study was, how does higher education facilitate transformative learning experiences that support the cognitive, emotional, and social recovery of individuals who have experienced cultic influence and groupthink dynamics? This question helped guide the study's design, the data collection, analysis, and interpretation of those findings. The study is especially relevant to online higher education because online programs often serve adults with varied personal, educational, and professional backgrounds. For institutions with online programs, the findings highlight the importance of creating learning environments that do more than deliver content or prepare students for their careers. Online higher education can also support critical thinking, inclusion, belonging, self confidence, and long term success for their students. The literature review shows that individuals who leave cultic or high control groups often face a long term recovery process involving trauma, healthcare challenges, and the loss of social and support networks. Much of the existing research has focused on the psychological support, including counseling, psychoeducation, and therapeutic approaches. However, less attention has been given to how higher education may support recovery and resilience among former cult members. This gap matters because educational settings may expose learners to diverse perspectives, critical thinking, rational dialogue, and new support systems, all of which may be beneficial to recovery and resilience. This study addressed that gap by exploring how former cult members described their higher education experiences after leaving their group. This is contributing to the research at the intersection of cultic influence, groupthink, recovery, transformation, and online higher education. The study was guided by Mersrow's transformative learning theory, which provided a lens for understanding how participants described critical reflection, exposure to diverse ideas, and perspective transformation. The study also used Dr. Steve Hassan's BITE model as its conceptual framework. The BITE model helped define cultic influence and supported participant eligibility by identifying 4 forms of undue influence commonly used by cults: behavioral, informational, thought, and emotional control. Together, these frameworks inform the literature review, the instrument design, participant eligibility, as well as data interpretation and conclusions. To investigate this problem, I used a qualitative phenomenological design grounded in a constructivist framework. This approach fit the study because I was exploring meaning, lived experience, and how participants interpreted their higher education experiences after leaving a cult. The phenomenological design helped focus the study on the shared experiences of individuals who had left cultic or high control groups and then later participated in higher education. The constructivist framework also fit because it recognizes that people build meaning through their experiences, relationships, and interactions with the world around them. The goal was not to measure recovery statistically, but to better understand how participants describe the role of higher education in their recovery and resilience. For data collection, I use an anonymous, semi-structured, open-ended questionnaire through SurveyMonkey. Participants were recruited through online support communities and networks. To qualify, participants had to be an adult who had left a cult, high control group, or environment involving undue influence or coercive control based on the BITE model. They also had to have at least completed one college level course after leaving the environment. In total, 26 former members either completed the questionnaire or responded to at least one of the prompts. Their descriptive narrative responses provided the data to examine how participants understood and described the role of higher education in their recovery and resilience. For data analysis, I use an inductive thematic analysis grounded in Braun and Clark's six-phase framework. After collecting the responses, I de-identified the data and uploaded the QDA minor light. I then reviewed the responses several times. I applied the initial codes, all while looking for patterns across the responses. I then reviewed and refined the emerging themes and identified the final themes that best captured the participants' shared lived experiences. This inductive approach allowed the themes to develop organically and come directly from the data rather than from categories that I had preset in advance. It also fit the phenomenological design because the focus was on the participants' meaning and how they understood those lived experiences. To strengthen the rigor, trustworthiness, and integrity of the study, I used several strategies commonly associated with qualitative research. First, credibility was strengthened by aligning the research question directly with the questionnaire, completing a pilot review, and then grounding the conclusions in participant responses. Dependability was then supported through an audit trail, process documentation, and the use of a standardized codebook that I published. Next, transferability was addressed through thick descriptions of the study context, sampling, and detailed analysis procedures. And finally, confirmability was then supported through reflective journaling, bracketing memos, and attention given to negative cases. Together, these strategies help increase transparency, manage researcher bias, and support the overall integrity of the study. Because the study involved a sensitive topic and potentially vulnerable participants, ethical safeguards were central to the research design. The study followed the Institutional Review Board or IRB approved procedures before data collection began. Before starting the questionnaire, participants reviewed and acknowledged the informed consent form. Recruitment messages emphasized that participation was voluntary and that you could skip questions or exit the survey at any time. To protect participants, responses were anonymous and any unintentional identifying information was removed before the data was secured on an encrypted hard drive. These protections were especially important because these individuals were discussing sensitive experiences related to being in a cult. Additionally, some of them may still have friends, family, or social connections within that group. The study was designed so that each major component connected logically to the next, creating a clear line from the problem statement through the final recommendation. The background problem identified a gap in understanding how higher education might support recovery and resilience after cultic influence and groupthink dynamics. That problem shaped the purpose of the study, which was to explore how former cult members described their higher educational experiences after leaving a cultic or high control environment. The research question then guided the study's design, data collection, analysis, and interpretation. This approach fit the study because I wanted to understand participants' lived experiences and how they interpreted the role of higher education in their recovery after leaving a cultic environment. The theoretical and conceptual frameworks also remain consistent throughout the whole project. Transformative learning theory helped frame concepts such as critical reflection, exposure to new ideas, and finally, perspective transformation. The BITE model helped define cultic influence and support participant eligibility throughout the study. Overall, each chapter was built on the previous, which helped keep the study focused, aligned, and grounded in the research question. The findings revealed four major themes: cognitive transformation, emotional recovery and resilience, social reintegration, and obstacles and barriers to pursuing higher education. Together, these themes provide the structure for the next part of the presentation. The first theme was cognitive transformation. Participants described how higher education exposed them to new ideas, encouraged independent research, and helped them evaluate information more critically. Many reported becoming more comfortable questioning assumptions and considering perspectives that differed from those they had previously been taught. One participant explained that college helped them to learn how to question information sources and engage with environments where disagreement and discussion were encouraged. These experiences contributed to greater cognitive flexibility and perspective transformation. Overall, participants described educational experiences that supported independent thinking, critical reflection, and a broader understanding of the world around them. The second theme was emotional recovery and resilience. Participants described developing greater self-confidence, personal agency, and a renewed sense of purpose through their educational experiences. For many, pursuing education became an important step in rebuilding their identity after leaving a high control environment. One participant shared that education helped them move forward, to find direction, and ultimately pursue a meaningful career helping others. Their experience reflected how educational achievement can contribute to confidence, purpose, and personal growth. These findings suggest that educational experiences may play an important role in helping individuals rebuild a stronger sense of self and develop a future direction. The third theme was social reintegration. Participants described how higher education introduced them to people with different backgrounds, beliefs, and life experiences. These interactions created opportunities for dialogue, collaboration, and the development of new social connections. One participant reflected that interacting with classmates challenged long-held assumptions they had about people outside their group and helped them develop a more balanced view of others. Exposure to diverse perspectives encouraged greater openness in social engagement. Overall, participants described educational environments as spaces where they could build new relationships and reconnect with a broader community. The fourth theme was obstacles and barriers. Although participants identified many positive educational experiences, they also described major obstacles that affected their educational journeys. One participant explained that higher education had been discouraged from within their former group, resulting in the loss of educational and career opportunities. Others described challenges such as balancing work and family responsibilities, having a limited support network, financial pressures, and difficult trusting institutions after leaving such authoritarian surroundings. These findings suggest that pursuing higher education was not always a straightforward process. Many participants faced personal and practical challenges while working towards their educational goals. The study has several leadership and innovation implications, especially for online higher education and adult learning. From a leadership perspective, the findings highlight the importance of learning environments that promote critical thinking, dialogue, psychological safety, and a sense of belonging. The study also adds to the understanding of some of the experiences adult learners may bring with them when they start or return to college. The innovation contribution is that it reframes online higher education as more than career preparation or a credential. It suggests that educational experiences may also support recovery, resilience, autonomy, and social reconnection. In practice, this means that institutions may need to strengthen faculty and advisor awareness, learner support systems, and inclusive approaches for adult learners with complex backgrounds. Particular implication could also include stronger orientations, more peer connection opportunities, tutoring, counseling referrals, accessibility services, and first year or introductory courses that really support critical thinking, rational dialogue, and early exposure to diverse perspectives. This study also raised several important questions for future research. One area for investigation is how specific institutional support services may influence recovery, resilience, and academic outcomes for former cult members. Additional studies could also compare the experiences across different settings, such as online programs, in person, community colleges, vocational and technical schools, and traditional universities. Research could also explore the experiences of individuals who attempted higher education but were unable to graduate. Long-term studies may be especially helpful in examining how transformative learning, recovery, resilience, and identity reconstruction develop over time. Finally, additional research could examine faculty, advisor, and student support staff awareness regarding coercive control, undue influence, and trauma-informed practices that will be particularly beneficial for vulnerable adult learners. Together, these findings suggest that higher education may serve as a meaningful component of recovery from cultic influence and groupthink dynamics. Participants frequently describe experiences that encourage their critical reflection, expose them to diverse perspectives, help them develop independent thinking, renewed confidence, and new social networks. For some, these experiences contributed to personal transformation and reconnection to the world outside of their former group. At the same time, the findings also showed that this process was not simple or universal. Some participants faced delayed access to education, limited support systems, distrust of institutions, academic challenges, and difficulties balancing school with adult responsibilities. Overall, the study suggests, though, that higher education may contribute to recovery and resilience when learning environments are supportive, accessible, and responsive to the unique needs of adult learners recovering from traumatic experiences. Finally, in preparation for this video defense, I used generative AI as a practice and preparation tool to help me organize my thoughts, verify that all the prompts were addressed, and to assist with developing visual aids. However, all of the interpretations, the findings, and conclusions remain firmly grounded in my own research, analysis, and scholarly work. I thank you for your time and for your consideration.